Hey yo, chat, what's up? Hey, King San Leke, ngele dudes. Hey yo, chat, feel me, chat. Ngibhizi la ngizama ukubona ukuthi iyiphi into engingayenza la. I'm trying to create this beat, but at the same time, I want to show you guys a little bit about how I think. This is obviously a demo. I'm just working stuff out, but I want to show you how I think in terms of how I process some of the things when I do production, because production and mixing almost go hand in hand. Because in uzuyizwe kahle into oyenzayo, it's almost like you tweak the production while you're doing the production, and you mix the stuff in while you're doing the production. If necessary, then you can send it out to a mixing engineer like myself, and we can fix it even further. But even when you're still working with production, like you're just tweaking stuff out. So, for example, here I have a kick drum. This is 119, as you can see. I have a kick drum that I've set up. Uh, it's sort of three-step, but as you can see that there's some pieces missing here and there just to give it groove. I'll play it for you so you can hear what it sounds like. So you can hear that there's places where there's just like missing things just for the groove. But how I like to work on this kick is before anything, I'll try and find the fundamental. In this case, it's around 50, 4950. I remember this kick because I've used it before. So I'll boost this by about 1 dB, maybe even a little bit more, just so that fundamental is hitting nicely. And then I'll dip a bit of the resonating frequencies around 123 and a small cut, 0. 0.8. I can even do like 1, just so that it doesn't resonate in this frequency. And then for the most part, I'll always do a double compression on the kick, because what I want, if I want to eventually get it to be louder, I have to reduce the dynamic of the kick so that it doesn't peak and stop me from getting more volume in the track. So I'll use a C2 on this one, as you can see. I'm doing about 2.5, 3 dBs on the first compressor. I'm doing about 1.5 on the second compressor. So that's just gonna reduce the dynamic. And then for the overall mix, I'll use a gain plugin. A lot of people who know me know that I don't touch faders until very later on in the production. You see, most of my faders are sitting at unity gain around 0. So I'll just add a gain plugin to where I want the level to be before it hits the fader. So in this case, I've reduced the kick by minus 5.1 after I've done the compression and the EQ, just so that I get a nice level. Now it's sitting around minus 7.8. What else do I have here? Next up, I have like a drum pattern. Also, I like my drums quite dry. Like, I know a lot of you guys like to add reverb on your drums and stuff. I like my drums quite, I will add a touch of reverb there and there, but I like my drums quite dry so that they hit a little bit more. And then the stuff with the effects is like the synths and the vocals and the things that are floating around. Then there can be reverb and delay and movement and stuff, but the actual drums are nice and punchy because they're dry. For the most part, I do add some reverb where I feel like there's a need for it. And then another trick I like to use is when I'm doing when the kick hits, I try to keep that space clear as much as possible. So I'll use something like shaper box where I can actually see the oscilloscope on the shaper box. If I'm gonna add a drum pattern like this, you can see in this area here that the tail of this drum is feeding into the downbeat of the next bar. In this case, I'm happy with where it is. But what I try to do to avoid some of that bleed is I reduce the actual sample. So here the sample length is 143, 0.143 seconds. Usually, yes, usually the sample is long like this. And when the sample is long like this and you come back to shaper box, you can see that this tail is feeding into the downbeat of the next bar. So when the kick hits, it's hitting with the tail of the other drum. I don't like that. I like to keep my drums nice and tight. So when the kick hits, you can actually feel the kick. So I'll reduce the sample length here. 0.140 something, I think it was. 143. Yeah, somewhere in between. Then when you look at it now and you play it together with the kick, you can see that it's not feeding into the next part. Same thing here, it's drums. I like to think about toms and low drums as if it's going to be a low tom or a low drum like this, low percussion, then I'll consider it as a low tom, almost like a floor tom. So my roll off will be around, whoa, what did I just do? My roll off will be around 65 hertz because, yeah, see, what did I do? Let me undo this and just redo this. So I'll do like 65 hertz because I feel like floor toms, that's a good range for a floor tom, you know. So this is low percussion. I don't have floor toms. This is low percussion. So it'll go around there as well. So around 65 hertz. I'll bump up a little bit of where I think the fundamental is after that. Then I'll dip. Because if you think of someone playing a drum, you know, there's the skin, and then you're beating the drum with this with the stick. So I try to dip the parts between the fundamental, the lower end of the drum, and the beta, where you can actually hear the stick hitting or the kick hitting, you know, which is the part up here. That's the part that I like to raise a bit. But in between those two parts, I'll dip it because there's usually a resonating frequency that's not too pleasant, for me at least. I mean, music is very subjective. It's how you hear it, it's how you like things to be done. And then after that, I'll do compression as well. So I have the C2. I'm doing quite a lot of compression. I'm doing about 4 dBs of compression just to tighten up the dynamics a little bit. Let's see what else I have. Yeah, I have two sets of claps here. So with this one, I have uh, EQ as well on this. This clap is very sensitive around the 1.62K. If I mute this, you can see, you can hear it just pops up a little bit in that region. So if I reduce this here, the energy moves towards the high end. Now you're hearing more of the sizzle, the more higher part, instead of just that sharp 1.62K there. I'm doing compression here. I'm doing two compressions here as well. See, I'm doing 3 dBs on the first compressor. I'm doing about 1.5 on the second. I'm just reducing dynamic just so I can get more volume at the end of the day. I also have a limiter on this one, but I'm using it very sleekly. I have it on dynamic mode. This is the Pro L2 from FabFilter. And then I've put the 1:1. So it's not really, you're not hearing volume change. You know, whatever volume I'm putting up, it's going to reduce it by the same amount so that it stays uniform. So in this case, I'm doing about 3 dBs or so of the reduction, but you're not hearing the volume change. But you're definitely going to save some headroom here. I have two of those. I have a tambourine. This is quite cool as well. So the tambourine, if you look at the usually I play this stuff, but for this purpose I wanted to draw it out like what most people do anyway. I have it on the 1 and the 3. I started off with EQ as well. With this one, I'm using spectral EQ, as you can see. So I'm not just cutting the highs out. I'm targeting specific frequencies that I feel like are harsh for this one. And then I've added a compressor as well. I'm doing 3 dBs of compression on this. Makeup gain is there. This is the trick for the groove here. I'm using a delay plugin, echo in this instance. I'm putting it to a 16, and you can hear us doing the taka 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 taka. Without it, it's just this. You see now it's taka 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 taka. And then after that, I've added soothe just to catch a little bit more. If you look at the first EQ, it's catching higher frequencies. So when I'm putting the soothe in my Oak sound, it's catching more of the high mids towards the mids, which is quite cool as well. I have this. Remember I said my low instruments, I consider them floor toms, so with this I'm also rolling out around 65 and a little bit dip of the resonant frequency straight after that. And then I could have raised the beta up, but because it's uh, it's playing multiple notes, I didn't want to raise up those specific notes, so I left it there. I've done compression here as well. I'm doing 2.5, 3 dBs, a little bit more as well, just to reduce the dynamic, make it up as well. And then my super gain plugin, which I put so that I don't have to do the fader just yet. I have a really cool loop here that I made a while ago and I've kept it. I call it heater. It sounds like this. But this loop has an EQ. Without the EQ, it sounds like this. So I just EQ'd up the top and I EQ'd up the bottom around 172, so it's nice and warm. And then I've put some compression as well. So all of these elements so far sound like this. You see now, this is where I felt like I needed to have reverb. When this instrument comes in, it's like a hit. That's when I've put the space to. So I normally wouldn't do that in the drums, but for this I felt like it needed it as well. With this as well, I had to be very slick with the tail even before the reverb comes in. You can see that this tail is not feeding into the downbeat of where the kick would be sitting. So I need the tail to end just before the downbeat hits, so that it's nice and clear when the kick hits. It's nice and punchy. That's very cool. So this is a cowbell. This cowbell is quite cool because I've decided not to quantize. I played it in, I played it in and I was grooving with it. And I decided I didn't want to quantize it because I wanted it to be a little bit loose. If I put the metronome in, see, it's slightly behind the beat, it's falling behind the beat, which I think is quite cool. EQ wise, I've used a spectral EQ as well here, so you can see it's not just dipping the area, even though it's quite a wide broad dip. It's only catching specific frequencies that I like, to be taken out because they're a little bit, my ears are a bit sensitive to those frequencies. And then I've added compression as well. Compression. And obviously my utility plugin, which is gain, which I love. Before the fader, you can see my faders are sitting at unity. I can't even put it at minus and at 0. I mean, yeah. I have a bongo here. I've dipped up this area. It would have been too resonant if you heard it, but in the mix, contextually, it sounds good when it's dipped out, so I don't have this in the mix. I've got compression here as well around -3, and then my utility. This block, same as well, that big resonating frequency, I cut it off. You might think that's where the block is sitting. Why am I cutting it off? In context of the mix, it sounds better when that resonating frequency is not popping up too much on my face. That's why I have it out, as you can see here. And then I have a slick little shaker here. Let's see what's going on with the EQ here on this shaker. I can make some decisions. Already they're trying to cross over here for me. You can see there's a big dip here. I wonder if I filtered it up to that, what would happen? Oh, it thins out a bit, so I don't really want it to. I still want to hear a bit of the beef from the shaker. I can try and find out what's happening here. Oh, that actually sounds cool. Let me change the bell to like 36. So if I'm going to cut this area, then it's going to focus, it's going to change the focus to this upper part of the shaker. I think that's cool. This hat is one of my favorite things to do. So what I do with this hat is I'll draw the hat out, quantize it. Sometimes I won't quantize it, but for this one I quantized it. And I try to filter out as much as I can so that I don't, because the lower the hi-hat goes, you start hearing what sounds like a kick. Because it's so low, you're just hearing, and that sounds like a kick on top of the kick that you already have. So that's not really desirable. So I'll filter it out, and then this frequency I've notched it a bit. But what I like to do with this, to play mind games with you, is I put this waves plugin called Mondo Mod. And it just moves the stuff stereo. It just moves it from side to side. As you can hear that the hat is moving, because I like movement. I like things to move, you know. So this plugin is really cool like that, because it's just moving stuff from left to right. And then I make it pump. I use the LFO tool. Other people would use sidechain, like you use an compressor and you sidechain it to the kick. What happens with that is, obviously, because it's sidechain to the kick, when there's no kick, then there's no sidechain, so you're not hearing the pump. I want the pump to happen even when the kick is not hit there, so you're hearing that little bit of movement all the time. That's why I put an LFO tool here and a quarter note. That's pretty dope. So far we have this. And then I'll put little stabs here and there. So I have two sets of hi-hats here. One is just a stab. And then the second one, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that's cool. These hats should go with another one that's gonna do, yeah. Everything sort of has its own pocket of space. And then a mighty full. But because this is just a 4-bar loop, what I can do is I can make it twice as much, 8 bars, and then only put the full after 8, and then take the kick out here, so you get, so it's now an 8-bar phrase now. It's a good start. It's a good start. I mean, obviously, it's still gonna have more stuff. I'm still gonna add more shakers. I'm still gonna add more. I'm gonna develop the music. So it's just the drums. I'm curious to know what you think and what direction do you think we should take it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Here, I want to make this series of videos where I'm sharing with you some of the things that I do and some of the ways that I think. Obviously, everybody has their own way of doing things, which is cool because we hear great music from different people all the time. So this is just me showing you how I would start a little demo and then it will develop. Maybe I can do another part where I'm showing you how I develop my chords, my bass guitar, how I load it in, and how I process it, as part of little mixing techniques that I use.